to this episode of the At Sea Podcast. I am your host, Justin McRoberts. I'm also co-hosting with producer Dan Portnoy, and welcome specifically to this episode of the podcast. Dan and I are doing a series of podcasts focused on the book, kind of reintroducing folks to the book Sacred Strides. We began last week with an overview, talking about the book before it, got into the introduction a little bit, and like why I wrote the book and some of the sort of surrounding themes, what have you. And what we're going to do is dive into each chapter and talk about, well, Dan's going to draw some stuff out. One of the things that's great about Dan and my partnership with Dan is Dan has a really unique perspective on the work I'm doing, and working more collaboratively with people is a really fun part of being an artist. So welcome to this episode of the At Sea Podcast, an interview with me conducted by producer Dan Portnoy, centered on the book Sacred Strides. Shall we? Let's shall. Here we go.
The book Sacred Strides. The man Justin McRoberts. The answers forthcoming.
Probably not the third part.
I don't know. It just made me think of the McNeil Lehrer NewsHour.
Yes, it did.
The old SNL. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Here we're off and running for episode number 2 on Sacred Strides. We're just going to talk about chapter 1 today because there's plenty there. There's plenty there to kind of jump into, and honestly, what's funny is I went back through my notes and I had highlights, and I said, cool. So well, why don't we just jump from there? So, all right. So you start off. You've got some poems right off the bat, but one of the things that I just highlighted right in the beginning, which I thought was funny, is that you say, "At no point in these pages will you find me prescribing some kind of balance between work and rest. I don't think that's how life works or how God designed you to live." Which is, I mean, kind of a tough thing because as entrepreneurs, as as freelancers, there's no downtime. I'm always thinking about work. Yep. I'm thinking about, like, am I doing enough? Am I getting things done? What's going on? And the whole thing, and then throw on my kids, and they got stuff, and there's stuff going on, and then there's church activities, and they were just like trying to figure it all in. Like, this weekend was so crazy, and I did everything was good to do, but not. I mean, it wasn't like they weren't have tos, but they were good choices.
Yeah, well, and this is one of the problems I have with balance as a concept, because for cats like you or me, for a lot of folks, and I know a lot of the listeners to this podcast, we have a lot of stuff. There's a ton happening. And the idea of balance, what balance does, the way we communicate it, especially if we don't teach around what we mean by it, balance seems to promise, either promise or threat, that like the goal is to get all of this done with equal attention and equally well. Get everything done. So balance kind of makes you think, the idea about balance kind of makes you think you're going to get everything done in the same day, on the same weekend. You're supposed to do all of it. You're going to get it all done. And you're going to be able to do it all equally, with equal attention, equal expertise, equal care. And that's an impossible task, and it sets us up for failure, because no matter how well you do in one facet of life, if you're not well balanced and something else is suffering, then you just feel crappy. You're like, oh, this is great, but I dropped the ball over here. And so now I can't enjoy my victories. I can't enjoy the thing I'm able to do really well today because I didn't get all these things done. That's one of the things balance does. As opposed to the way life actually works, which is like there are times when there are seasons in which certain things are more important. And I have to make a decision. So do I have all these things happening at the same time? Multiple projects. I have a book project I'm working on. I'm selling this book project. I'm helping to lead a series of 10 to 12 retreats for Young Life staff folks across the country over the next year. I'm doing the podcast. I've got 2 kids. I've got all this stuff happening. What I have to know is that in the particular season I'm in, if I'm paying attention to my life, which is what rest lets me do, certain things are more important right now, which means other things are going to take a backseat. And I have to have grace for myself to say, that thing I'm just not going to do as well. Now, here's where that's a super tough rub, is because sometimes, Sometimes that's being a family guy. And it's a tough thing for Christian or religious folks to hear, is that sometimes being the best family guy you can be is going to take a back seat because it's project time and you've got to kill that project. Should that be every season? Oh, hell no, it shouldn't be. But there's seasons when you got to look at your kids and say, I'm not going to be as available for the next couple weeks, or I'm not available today and I could be. It would be a great dad move for me to throw caution to the wind and not do this work project. But that's not today, and that's not this season. And so there's a little bit of a head fake there. Like, doesn't mean you're being a bad dad. It just means that you can't do all things well every day, all the time. There's seasons and moments you have to pick. So I hate the idea of balance. I try to kill it as best I can in the first bit of this book.
Yeah, well, it's so rough because a year ago I was so ripped apart with, like, I couldn't make my life work. Nothing
Yeah.
it wasn't working. It was like I'm hustling as much as I can. I'm running the kids around, the chauffeur thing. Everybody's got activities. I'm trying to make sure I do date night with my wife, and like I just felt like I was failing completely in and I couldn't sleep less. There was not the opportunity, like,
Yes.
because that's usually the first thing to go, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're like, well, I'll just get up early or I'll stay up late and I'll get this thing finished.
Yes.
I couldn't sleep any less than I
And
was
then
doing,
and then it's the perpetual cycle of I'm sacrificing my health, my well-being, so that even when I am present, I'm not as healthy and clear as I could be. And now you're in the spiral of, like, it's not going well and it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality in seasons like that, it's like there's probably an aspect of your life that you really are doing really well, but balance as an idea screams at you that you're not doing everything well, so none of it counts. And it's just the freaking worst. It's absolutely terrible. It's a lie from the pit of hell, and I want to kill it with a stick.
I always think of what's weird is I always think of nuclear submarines, which is like, we're going to go 120% on the reactor. And it's like, you can do that for like a week.
Yes.
But then at some point it's like,
yeah.
This is no, and some guy in a Russian accent is going to be like, Captain, we cannot do this anymore.
Well, and so this takes me to the other side of the problem of balance for entrepreneurs, is those projects. We tend to, as entrepreneurs, will have like projects in our mind. Usually we have 2 or 3. Sometimes it's 3 or 4, depending on who you are. I don't know entrepreneurs who just have the one. It's usually like, I've got 2 or 3 ideas. And because I've got 2 or 3 ideas, now my life professionally feels impossible because there's not a chance in hell I'm going to get it all done. My thing is, you absolutely can. And what that means is, we'll go with the nuclear submarine analogy, is that we're going to look at your calendar. This is the thing I do in coaching all the time. We're going to look at your calendar. We're going to talk about this year. We're going to talk about these projects. We're going to pick one of these projects. And it's almost always that. It's almost never like, this is the clear choice. You just have to select one. You're going to pick one. And you're going to go at 120% on this project right now because it's massive. It's going to cost you hours. It's going to cost you money. And like Pressfield says, like, any project worth doing is going to cost you twice as much money. It's going to take twice as long. It's going to be twice as hard. So, but you're going to go 120% on this. And so you're going to go tell your friends and your family, this is what's up. I got to get this thing done. The world's going to be a better place. I can bless you on the other side of this thing. We're going to, and you go 120% on the project for a season. And get that one done and knock it off the list. And tell the other ones, and this is the other thing we do with the calendar, is you tell the other projects, hey, this is 2024. I promise you, I'm going to have time for you at the tail end of 2025. I don't have time for you right now. I really want to, but I can't do everything at once. So you're going to have to wait. And then you put that project on the calendar, and just like a petulant child, it sits in the corner and waits for you to be done with this project.
Right.
Then, like, once you got the one project done, part of what happens is your soul figures out, I don't have to do everything all the time equally well. I can do some things really well for a season. You get used to that pattern, and now you feel free to make plans about bigger stuff. Entrepreneurs get stuck all the time not doing projects because they think they're supposed to do all of it at once, and you just can't. That's what balance tries to tell you, and it's lying to you.
Yeah. And that's, well, and this is the tough thing, because I feel like I'm supposed to rise and grind, right? Like, that's like if I pay any attention to a lot of really great voices, like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what they're saying. Just like, but how am I supposed to make that work? Because I'm supposed to rise and grind, but I'm also supposed to have self-care, and I'm supposed to care about me, but I'm supposed to but then there's this drive within that I'm supposed to make this thing. So
Yep.
I have to take a new audiobook to fruition, and I have to
Yep.
do it in a very short amount of time. But
Yep.
I'm also supposed to check some boxes that say, I'm treating my marriage relationship well.
Yep.
I got to take care of the kids, and the
Yeah.
grass needs to not die. And then, maybe there's some sort of car problem, just like
Usually.
it's all rolling. Yeah, right. Exactly. Especially once it's like, hey, what am I supposed to do with this thing? And the car's like, how about I die right now? Right
Well,
in the
this is
middle.
where rest becomes a really fruitful partner to work. And this is why, again, part of what I've done with the book is like, these are not opposites. These are two pathways to the same thing. The thing you're wanting in work and rest is you want to live a full and complete life. That's what your soul desires. I want to be fully alive. And your soul is chasing that in work. The way rest helps you achieve that in work is if I create space and time to like pay attention to my life, then like I've got space and time to evaluate how am I doing in my primary relationships. Because if I'm just going 197%, if I'm just in the submarine going, at 120% on the reactor, if I'm just doing that, then I don't have time and space to evaluate. I also don't have time and space to evaluate not just my primary relationships and my personal life outside of work. I don't even have time to really evaluate the work I'm doing. So rest becomes a way for me to actually pay attention to my life so that when I am where I am, I'm actually fully there and I know what's going on with the rest of my life. So you dive in, as an example, to, well, I'll say it like this. So there's a story, man, I can't remember which project I wrote the story about, but I wrote the story about like absolutely stepping all over a work partner a bunch of years ago. We were 5-6 months overdue on my first book project, which you remember, it was like, it was a
Mm-hmm.
book and it was another book and the book had art
Mm-hmm.
in it. It was 3 other artists. And also there
Mm-hmm.
were these CDs, and then those CDs like became EPs, and then the EPs became a full length record, and then we were going to do this documentary film that went along with it. It was just like this massive project. So of course we're 4.5, 5 months over, and because I'm probably putting in 70, 80 hours a week on the project, and my partner at the time is a guy named Greg. Well, I'm wearing him entirely out, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't see that because I'm just driving. I'm
Right.
just kicking ass, right? And it's and at some point, like, I don't remember exactly how Greg communicated it, but it was like, it wasn't passive aggressive at all, but it was direct and kind. He was like, I can't do this anymore, like, you're impossible to work with. And I was like, oh, now if I had been taking like time in my
Mm-hmm.
life to take a break, um, regularly once a week, get
Right.
outside, get some altitude, then I would have had the capacity to recognize what was going on between me and Greg. Like, I've never made that
Right.
mistake again with a work partner again, because I'm going in, I'm paying attention to the people I'm with, I'm paying attention to the folks I'm working with and alongside and for, because I'm coming in rested and with perspective. Rest becomes a great partner for serious work because it allows me to be fully present, not just to the project, but to the people who are in it. Without rest, I come in just driven. I come in only paying attention to problems. And you and I both know this. When I'm not rested, all I see is what isn't done. All I see is like the stuff I can't finish. Everything becomes a problem and it becomes a burden. And
And the
that's just like
attitude's
a
terrible.
shit perspective to be working at like a great project from.
Yeah.
Instead, rest lets me be more whole so that I'm like, I can see what's not great, but I can be joyous and celebrating like all the stuff we've accomplished up to this point. So, rest becomes a great partner to work because it lets me be whole while I'm doing it.
Well, if we can go around the cul-de-sac here for just a second, though, um, I feel like the work piece uh, is the perspective thing, because like so for example, a lot of people come to LA. We say we're going to do a whole bunch of work things and it's going to be massive and we're going to be, so everything in your life becomes sold out to that thing, whether it's acting or producing, and
Yep.
you're constantly learning how do I get to do all of these things. And then I think I was here for probably, I don't know, 10 years before I was like, this is a job. This is
Yes.
just a job. It's not my everything. Can't define me because I was losing myself in the whole process. And so if everything, and I became really precious, which is the worst thing when actually creating something.
Yep.
So I was getting really precious about absolutely everything. And I was like kind of
Yep.
losing my mind about, well, I can't move. And I was getting kind of frozen, and because everything has to be insane.
Yep.
How do we not become so precious, especially because you deal with a lot of in the coaching. I know when you're talking with so many artists about not being precious,
Yep.
and viewing it as like, hey, dude, so you're just going to clock in, and then
Yep.
you're going to clock out. So what?
And that becomes
How do you get around
that's
it?
what the practice of rest helps to do. Is when I say to my entire work life, regardless of the project, that there's going to be a day you're not going to get any of my attention. Like, that's a power move. That's a soul level power move that we put on our own passions. Is there's going to be a day this week, regardless of who you are, you're just not going to get my attention. That helps me in the moment when, like, I'm feeling tired, or I'm starting to feel precious. If I'm unpracticed at detaching from that in that moment, I don't have the strength or the power. So I've got to plan that as a practice. It's what rest does with passion projects, is it helps us to practice our detachment, so that I can, because I want you to work your ass off. Like, I want you to get in a project and absolutely crush it. Like, I totally want you to do that. I want you to get to the end of the project and be like marathon tired, like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. I totally want that. But in order to actually work that hard, you've got to be detached. You have to be. If you're not detached, you can't work as hard, because you get precious, because you get hung up on details, because you get obsessive about stupid crap, because it becomes about your identity and not about the job. I can work really, really, really hard at a job and be satisfied at it. If it becomes my identity and I'm entangled in it, it's not a job, and I'm not working. I'm maintaining, I'm managing, I'm holding together. If it's a job, I can do the work. If it's my identity, I'm I'm managing myself, and I'm justifying. And that's emotional labor I don't want to do. So the practice of rest teaches me on the regular that no matter what it is my project, no matter what the project is in front of me, there's going to be a day I'm going to flat out say, you don't get my attention today. So that in the moment when I need to pull my attention away from this thing, either because it's not working or because I'm not, I have the power to do that. And unless I practice it, I won't be able to do that.
Yeah, that's good about the idea of creating versus managing, because
Well, and
that's
that's
so
like, I
different.
mean, we can, you and I, like, we can talk about that, but only folks who've been in that know the difference. We're
Hmm.
like, if it's a job and I'm healthy and I'm clear, I'm working and I'm busting it. But when I'm in anxiousness and it's about my identity, all I'm trying to do is keep it from being bad. Like, I'm not trying to do it really well. I just don't want it to be bad.
Yeah,
Now I'm
not win,
maintaining,
but just not fail.
just not fail.
Yeah.
100%. And that's like, we know the emotional difference. You can't, like, you can tell someone that, but like, what, until you've been in that, you're like, what's the difference? And then you're in it, you're like, I'm sweating, I'm nervous, I haven't eaten, and I've got diarrhea for 4 days. So is this is not good? No, you're working from a really unhealthy place.
Right.
That's
Right.
what happens.
Right. Another quote that I highlighted is, I am beloved in and through work. I'm not proving myself or earning my right to be loved by working well or accomplishing things. And I have a tough time with this. I think I've always struggled with this rest idea, either because of having been I mean, I think I've had some sort of side work, side hustle that I've done since I was like 20, and here I am, at 47. So there's
Yeah.
always been a tough time of the be versus do,
Yeah.
kind of thing, even to the point that I know that in my late 20s, people would ask me how I was doing, and I literally would answer with what I was doing.
Yep.
So how do we, what's your best encouragement for someone as there can, trying to wrestle with this be versus do
Yeah,
idea?
that's good. Well, the one of the hard answers is, like, you got to fail at something you really care about in order to really get there. Like, one of the ways we really actually learn this thing is, like, is we and I wish that wasn't true, but it's just like, it's like so many actually formational things. Like, there's some actual trials you have to go through, because you can only really understand this on an existential level. Like you can't be taught this. You have to feel it in your bones. So you kind of have to fail at something you really, really, really wanted to be successful at because you tied it to your identity. You kind of have to. So that's one thing. And then if that's true, which I think it is, you have to be able to do that with some people around you who can talk to you on the other side of it. That's the biggest one. The biggest one is like, get out there. You're going to be entangled. You're going to have mixed motives. You're going to make it about your identity. You're going to think you're supposed to prove yourself to the world. Like there's just no way around that. Absolutely no way around it. You're going to feel that way. So get out there and make that mistake. Get out there and absolutely make that mistake, and have some folks around you who, when the project doesn't work and you feel like you're a failure at absolutely everything, you can actually do the work of disentangling you from your work life. So this is the gift of disillusionment. One of the gifts of disillusionment is exactly this, that I don't want to live with the illusion that I am what I produce. The only way for those of us who are driven to parse those identities is to drop the ball and like feel it in our bones and need to make that separation. I have to need it. I have to be like, I don't want to feel this way. And if I don't get to that place where like, I really don't want to feel this anymore, then I'm going to continue to do that like weird psychological, like mind game on myself. It's like, oh no, I'm above all that. No, I'm above all that. I'm above all that. And then in the meantime, like I'm slowly eroding myself because I'm not above all that, because freaking nobody is.
Right.
So disillusionment is the gift where like, I really want to dissociate myself from an aspect of who I am. I have to feel that in my bones in order to do it. So go out there, make that mistake, and have some people around you, coaches, counselors, spiritual directors, really good friends, your freaking mom, whoever, who can help you like when the project falls apart to detangle, to like experience deeper value. The other side of the coin here is this, not the other side of the coin. On the other side of that, part of what we learn is in Hyde's book, he talks about different economies. In the book, The Gift, he talks about there's the gift economy, and then there's just like the regular old like financial economy. So we're always working in both things, where like in the gift economy thing, we're like, this is who I am, and I do it because it's who I am. In that, like if I'm making stuff, if I'm writing, if I'm painting, if I'm producing because it's in my bones and it's tied to my identity, I want to be able to live there and feel good in and of myself. I am also always functioning in that other economy. And I have to know that I'm doing both those things at the same time and that they're different. And that in the one, it's me, the people who love me, and God. And that's it. And I do this. And if I choose then to sell and I enter it into the other economy, tricky teaching, you are kind of there to prove yourself.
Yeah.
So you don't get to walk into the studios on the row and be like, listen, I'm just self-actualized and you don't have to care about what I do. They're like, oh, cool. Thanks, Tom. Bye. The kid's like, no, be here to win, because that's that economy. So detangling those two things, know that you're all, as an artist, if you're truly deeply an artist, you're going to make stuff because it's in your bones to make. And that's between you, the people who love you, and God. If you want to sell stuff, then you can enter into another economy. And that economy, beloved, that economy is about proving yourself. And if you want to get over there and play that game, know that it's a game, know that it's about proving yourself, and know that there are like real life wins and losses. And you can't let those two economies touch each other. You have to know that this is a different thing than this one.
Yeah. Now, what do you like? I know we've had this conversation because I remember it like 5-6 years ago. There was a artist that you were working with, or some sort of creative, and I think it's not an uncommon trait. So I don't want to throw them under the bus per se, but so many times I read a story of like Jack Welch, for example, from GE, who ran GE, but he, he's this titan of industry. But he lost his family along the way. And that just, is sad to me, and very much very conscious of such a thing when I was younger, saying like, I don't want to do that. Like, he is a success according to a lot of standards, like
Yep.
like incredibly successful. But
Yep.
it just was sad to me to see like the family piece kind of slip away. And I was very conscious to say in my early 20s when I was reading about him that I didn't want to do that.
100%.
But I hear there's always this, like, there is that tug of like, my kids are holding me back from really creating, or my commitment, my family commitments are holding me back, so I have to tell them they're kind of on their own, so I can do my thing.
Yeah.
And then, and the tension of that, um, being that, and I remember you saying that, like, um, because you were actually telling me at the time, like, that's actually a really important job, and it's really primary, and
Yep.
it's not, they're actually helping your art. I think you went so far as to say, like, that is actually helping you,
Yep.
instead of looking at it as kind of a detractor. What like, how do we get into that space where we're just, how do we create the space or the boundary? I mean, I know
Yeah.
we're talking about clocking in and clocking out, and so not
Yep.
being so precious on things, but this is just like, this is it to me. This is the rubber in the road
Yeah.
of like, especially because if you've got young kids and you're creating, holy
Yep.
crud,
Yep.
it's late nights, it's early mornings.
Yeah. So the first thing, and I don't have this pinned. These are things that I know, and are working for me. But I'm 50. I've got another 25 years of real good work energy left. So I'll learn some more stuff as I go along, and my kids will get older. But here's the stuff I know. One, it really begins with family stuff. It begins with communication. So talking, not only like I was saying before, like when it's heavy work season, like, hey, I'm gonna be less available. Like, communicate. Like, say this. So I was having this conversation with another client recently who, he had a significant book contract. I was super jealous. I was like, wow, that's a lot of money they give you to do that book. He had a significant book contract, and he was way behind on his deadlines because he had committed, because he had dropped the ball in the past and had been like absent and was a total disaster with his family, and was like in that, like, places where you and I are like, I'm angry at everything. It's not you. I'm mad, just generally mad. And like his family was like, we don't like when you're writing books. And so he'd done it poorly in the past. Got a second book contract. He's fantastic. And he just he had not got into the work. And what we talked about was like, go to them and say, listen, I don't ever want to do that again. I don't want to be that guy. I do want to get this book done. And let me tell you why. Here's why this book's important. And this is what it looks like for me to have a job. Like, talk to your kids about your work, because they're going to have work to do later on. Which is to say this. So it begins with communication and letting them know, like, this is going to be heavy work season. In that communication, and this is like this place where these things get woven together. One of the things we get to pass on to our kids is what it looks like to be a whole, impassioned, embodied person, which includes work. So teaching our kids what it looks like for us to be impassioned, embodied, like workers and artists, like, that's massive. And if anyone's going to set a tone for your kids about what it looks like to work well and to live well, it's you. So, like, make it about communication with your kids, and know that if you do passion projects and you do stuff that really matters to you, and you're putting work in the world that you're really proud of, and you're spending that, the 120% time in the submarine or whatever, and you're killing it for 75 hours a week for a month, and you communicate to your kids, like, this is important, and this is why, and this is what art looks like, and if you can keep your promises and say, I'm going to be done in 4 weeks, again, that's part of communication. I'm going to do this. This is what dad's work life looks like for the next 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Keep your promises, like, do it in 2 to 4 weeks. Then you get to teach your kids, and that's being a good dad. That's being a good parent. Is communicating with the kids and loving them and trusting them with the truths you have to tell. But two, being a good parent also means, like, living fully, completely as yourself, because that's going to be the task they have when they're adults. Is, how do I live completely as myself and not be overly responsible to someone else's needs or agendas. They need to see parents who are chasing their dreams, making things happen, putting the work in. And they need to hear that from someone who's able to communicate to them and say, like, this is what the season looks like. So it begins with communication. And then we get to 40,000 feet and be like, this is part of what it looks like for me to be a good dad. Being good, I'm not less of a dad when I'm working my tail off. I'm still the same dad if I can teach my kids this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, but I think the tough part is that the more I talk about things like that with other guys or with other parents, is just that it's really tough to be vulnerable
Yes.
with your family, to be like, I don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to try this project, and because like for example, like I was it took me a year and a half to write a pilot. It took me, and like I was working on it a lot, but other stuff was getting in the way, and
Yep.
we even had this huge conversation about, like, okay, so everything has been on fire here for the last 4 years
Yep.
because of COVID and a house remodel, and just the way our life was. And they were now older and finishing up high school and things. And then I was like, so it was on fire. I don't feel like it is on fire now, so I'm going to
Yep.
spend a little more time doing that. But there's also like it's just kind of weird, because you're like,
Yeah.
I'm a person, and I'm not an authority right now. I'm just being a person with you.
Well,
And
I
a
mean,
lot of people have problems with that.
but I mean, you are an authority in that place too. I mean, it's just like that's part of what it looks like. I don't relinquish my authority when I become vulnerable, right? Like instead, it's like this is what it looks like for the person in power to be human, and I don't have to make that choice. Like because they know anyways. Like your kids experience you emotionally, and I don't want to overstate this in some sort of weird fairy tale way, because kids are great and kids are also dumb in the same way that because they don't see the world and their world is super small. But your kids feel you, like they already know. Like if you're in stress, if you're not doing well, they know. Like they can see it, they feel it,
Yeah.
because they've known you. So all I do by opening my mouth and being vulnerable is actually I build that authoritative bridge then with my kids. Like, hey, when I'm not okay, I'm still your dad. And when I'm dropping the ball or when my projects are failing, I'm still your dad. So I'm not just teaching lessons in vulnerability. Like they know I'm not okay when I'm not okay. I mean, it's like I can see it in their faces. With like, Dad's not okay today.
Yeah.
So when I can communicate that, one, I galvanize that relationship, and it gives me like more authority and more power as time goes on to be their dad when they need help. But then also teaches them like, hey, when you're an adult and you're responsible, and like the roof over your head like only stays if you can pay for it month to month. Like when you're in that place, you're gonna have days, weeks, months, sometimes years, depending on who you are, where like shit doesn't work and you really wanted to, and you're gonna not feel good about it. And when you don't feel good about it, you're still gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Only I can teach my kids that. That's it.
Yeah. I hate it, especially because my middle child sees me maybe even better than my wife does, and it's very upsetting.
It's very upsetting.
Very upsetting.
It's very upsetting.
Just
Yes,
ugh.
they have those feelers, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about some rest things, some
Yeah.
Sabbath pieces. So you've got this quote in the again in the first chapter that says, just like don't kill each other and don't steal each other's stuff are commandments about ensuring you and I get to live more fully and freely, so it is with keeping the Sabbath. Now, I have not been great throughout my life keeping the Sabbath. I think the some of the advantages of maybe in the Jewish faith of like, it's kind of extreme, in terms of like,
Yes.
we're not going to turn on lights. We're not going to do like, but everything shuts down Friday night. And that being a thing. Whereas like for a lot of us, Sunday is a really busy day.
Yeah.
Really busy, just absolutely loaded with church activities or whatever, or even trying to catch up. And then the Sunday night scaries of trying to prep for the week and
no,
whatever else is
Monday.
going to happen. Yeah, exactly. So and in terms of how do you just design your life in such a way that the Sabbath is easier.
Yeah, that's great. So in the first chapter, I do this. I walk through the way I understand Sabbath, and I borrow this definition from a guy named Mark Buchanan, whose book the rest of God, Restoring Your Soul by Restoring the Sabbath, was a significant part of my life and plays a significant role in the book. And he talks about Sabbath being like one whole day of rest from work every week committed to God. That's his definition. And part of what he does in the book is he helps to bridge the gap between the seriousness of the commandment and the freedom that Jesus communicates when he talks about and practices the Sabbath. So he would have been Jesus would have been among hyper religious cats. He would have been like a Sabbath breaker because he healed people on the Sabbath, and he broke rules, right? And there's a ton there that I don't have the authority or the wisdom to really get into in terms of exactly how the scriptures work. There are better teachers who I believe when they say things, but part of what Buchanan gets to is like in that moment, one of the key moments when Jesus talks about the Sabbath, in which Jesus talks about the Sabbath, he's on the Sabbath day, he's walking with the disciples, and they're pulling ears of corn off of the stalks, and they're eating them. And the hyper religious stop them. They're like, you're not supposed to, like, you're harvesting, and you're not supposed to be harvesting on Sabbath day. And it's almost, you can kind of feel like the eye roll moment with Jesus. He's like, gracious, you guys, honestly, you're like, we're just you're getting a snack. They're getting snacks. You're seriously on us about them getting snacks. And what he says is like, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Here's what's scandalous about that moment, because it's a commandment, which is to say, insofar as it's a commandment, along with things like adultery and murder. What Jesus is saying is like, all of these things that were given to you, all these things, the value in the relationship between humanity and the law rests entirely in humanity. The law is nothing without what it adds to or protects in human life. So what we tend to do with most of our religious practices, what we tend to do with some of our religious obligations, that's the sentence I want to use, is we tend to place the value on the rule. We tend to place the value on the practice. We tend to place the value on the commandment. When what Jesus seems to be saying, and I totally buy this, is the value of this thing, this commandment, is what it adds and protects in your life. So with the Sabbath, I think it becomes a conversation between you and God, and the people who love you, about how best to do this in a way that actually does what it's supposed to do for your life. So why does it work so well to place the Sabbath on Friday through Saturday in the olden days, which they didn't do super well as a culture, but it's because everyone was doing it. Like everyone was on board at the same time. That's just culturally not true here.
Right.
And so does that now make it impossible? What I think ends up happening instead is like, I go to the people I'm living my life with, my close business partners, my family, and I have a conversation about when does this actually work for us? And then we give it a shot and we try. Mm-hmm. So I can't Sabbath on most Sundays because I'm teaching at churches, because I've got work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I have, on like right now on Sundays, like most Sundays, we'll have kids over here for a thing called the Good News Club. And it's like a little church service of sorts around the table. And like, it's work. It's fantastic. I love it. We're talking about sacred, holy things in the person of Jesus Christ with 13 and 14-year-old kids. And they've got great I love it. It's fantastic, but it's work. So that's not a Sabbath day for me. So my Sabbath can't be on Sundays, which is true of a lot of religious people. So finding what day works makes it a conversation, which then makes it a matter of my life's formation and my health, rather than just some rule I have to figure out how to implement in my life, which mostly makes me feel guilty. So that's a long answer to the dilemma of how do you start practicing Sabbath? Understand that the value of the commandments has to do with the value of your life, and that these things were given to us as humans because we're loved and not because we're awful and he's trying to fix us. That's not how the commandments work. We're loved and we're cared for. And I don't want you to kill each other because I want you to value each other, because life will be better if you're not murdering one another. I don't want you to steal each other's stuff, not because the stuff is valuable, but because you'll diminish someone else's life and you'll distort your own character. I mean, the commandments are predicated on the value of human life, including the Sabbath. So how does it work for your life as your life is being lived right now becomes the question.
Hmm. Now, how do we on the practical side? Do you find the sundown to sundown is more effective
Seasonally,
than the full
yes.
day?
It
Yeah.
totally depends. So what I do is I look forward on my calendar as far as I can according to the season I'm in, and try to like plug it in where I know for sure. Well, for sure is not the way I want to. Who I know as best as I can, like that'll work.
Hmm.
So up until somewhat recently, Saturdays have been great. But like starting on Friday evening, it hasn't always been great. Mostly because a lot of my work projects, I just have this really interesting work energy on Friday nights. I'm not sure what to do about that, except to take advantage of it. But like Friday night rolls around, and I'm like, everyone's got something to do. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not obliged to anyone, and I'm going to give a lot of like really like cool nighttime energy to this work project. So for, like Saturday works as like wake up early and have a whole day, because on Sunday I don't have a lot to do anyways. So Saturday has worked. It's no longer working as well, so we got to reorient things. Sundown to sundown works for a lot of folks because our evening obligations, especially if you have kids, like it's hard to like lock out a whole day. But again, it becomes a negotiation. For some folks, it super works. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, because in my younger days when I was working just a job that I wouldn't say was my passion, but it was just a retail gig, and yeah, I was working weekends, and so Monday was my day
Yeah,
to like usually chill, and then that was the same way when I worked at a church, and that was the other thing is like, okay, so I'm off Saturday and Monday were my days to kind of chill. Um, but I do think that the sundown to sundown thing works a lot easier, especially when we start talking about like if Sunday's the day, like the Saturday night
yeah,
to Sunday night, because then Sunday night I don't feel guilty because that's always a thing, right? Like,
yep.
because as soon as I say I'm not doing this, this is the area that I'm totally blocking out on my schedule, and then all of a sudden there's just this like phone call of like I need you to do this thing, and it's super
I do.
important, and then you're like, crap, if I don't do this, I'm gonna lose money, or it's really important. It is really important,
It is really important.
but then I'm feeling bad, and it's like I just said that I was going to block this out for my schedule. So having the ability Sunday night to kind of look at the week and talk to the kids and see like, okay, so what are we
Great.
doing for the week and where are we going, and just get kind of straight on just everything. I find that
Yes.
that sundown to sundown helps out quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm the same way with Sundays, is because on a Sunday, not just because of religious obligations, but also because I want to I don't want to be prepping for my Monday on Monday morning.
yeah,
Like
totally.
I want to be in my Monday and going. And so Sunday night I try to get all my ducks in a row. So
Right.
Sunday's a bad day for me to try to take off.
Are you a planner kind of person, like a physical planner?
I overall organization, yeah. If I have like you know what I mean, like do I do things in physical space?
No, no, no. But like, do you have like a planner that
I
you use? Oh, I
have.
don't have mine.
Oh, so I have a couple things. So most of my life organization still happens digitally. Oh, no, so this is how mine works. So I do most of my like actual life organization with like in iCal,
Okay, yeah.
because it sends me reminders
With
and it's tied to my
and the
phone.
shared family calendar
Shared
deal,
family
and
calendar.
yeah,
So it's like if I make a decision and here's what I'm doing, and I'm like, hey, can I do this? Like, no, oh, Asa has a rehearsal. I've got to drive. I can't. So it's easier for me to plan because I'm trying to be responsible to those things. I do on when I do have like some physical space stuff. So like I have this thing
hmm,
when I like depending on the project. Some things, some of my organization does have to happen in physical space. because of my relationship to the thing. That's a little bit complex, but psychologically, like there's some things that I'm going to put on that board because I don't want to put them on digitally. I just want to put it up there mostly so I can like scratch it off. But outside of that, almost everything else happens digitally because I need reminders, lots of them.
Yeah, because I hate the ADD side of things of when you wake up and you're like, what am I doing today?
Yeah, no,
That,
can't do that.
and I hate
It's a recipe
starting
for
again.
anxiousness and depression. If I'm like, I don't have anything, what am I? No, if I need reminders to be like, you have this, this, and this. I need. Oh, why am I blanking on his name? What's Tony Stark's AI?
Oh, Jarvis.
I need a Jarvis to be like, good morning, sir. Today
Yeah.
you have a meeting at 10 o'clock and one at 1. And between that time, you'll head to the gym. Like, I love that. That's very
So
helpful.
do you end your days with that, like setting up what you're doing the next day? Or
I'll look over it.
How do you do that? Yeah.
So I'm planning as I go along because of the way my brain works. Like if I've tried in the past to be like, there's a time at the end of the day where I'm going to catch all my stuff for the next day or for the rest of the week. And I just forget too much stuff. So I'm catching and planning. I'm noticing catching and planning all day, where like the in between things, I'll like this thing's popping up in my head, and I'll like grab a pen and I make a quick note. Like I'm in a meeting and I'm like, oh my god, I totally forgot. And then in between, and then in like the 6 or 10 minutes between that meeting and the next, then I'll like get into the calendar and plug it back in. If I try to wait till I have created space to remember things, I'll just forget too many things. Yeah, so same. I do that. What I will do at the tail end of the day and at the tail end of every week is I will look over the week. I'll look over the next day to make sure did I miss anything or is there anything standing out? But that's all I can do. If I'm trying to plan, it's got to happen in the moment because my brain's just like moving way too fast.
Now the next thing you come to in the chapter is this and honestly I think I have struggled with wrapping my head around how you define what you do.
Okay.
Because there has been because some of it I'm just like, Justin, I just need you to just say that you're a creative coach. Just say I'm a creative coach instead, and that's not the sentence you give. You give this sentence. My work is to provide helpful, clarifying language for your process and practice of life. And that is very frustrating to me.
Yes, it is.
Because I get why you do it now, but early on, I was like, especially as you were transitioning, you were like, so I'm doing these singing and now I'm going to do more of the talking. And then you were like, I'm doing the talking and I'm doing the writing. And it was like, cool. Okay. I get all this. And then you were like, now I'm going to do the coaching. And I was like, how do all these things work? And you're like, my work is to provide helpful, clarifying language for your process and practice of life. And I'm just like, can you just say you're a creative coach? And that makes so sense because then you're an author, you're a singer, you're a public speaker, and then you're a coach. And it's like that I can wrap my head around. It's very easy. It checks a lot of boxes for me, and I'm moving on very quickly. And I think the other part that it just completely unrelated. I think that you always would say things like in the context of where you are, and I'd just be like, in that context, I don't just. Do you mean in my life? Do you mean in my workplace? But by saying the context, I mean, I was like, oh man, you're getting wordy on me. And I would be just kind of frustrated by myself, just going, okay, well, I mean, he's not hurting anyone, so I don't have to
I'm
stop.
Just annoying the hell out of you.
I guess,
yes.
and mostly maybe it's just that the world of like, I don't have a lot of time to give you. Can you just tell me what you do really fast? Kind of thing. Or, somebody, because I just know like out here, the funniest thing is everyone's like, so what do you do? What do you do? And if I don't really want to get into what I do, I'll just tell people I'm a janitor or whatever, like, because and sometimes and then they were like, really? And I'll be like, yep, because I clean up a lot of messes, and which is real.
It's very real.
But I don't have the title of janitor. They just say producer. So there's that. But because I feel like everybody's a producer out here. But so coming back to you in this helpful, clarifying language for your process and practice of life, why do you say that?
So two really, really fortunate strokes of luck or miracle, or kind of mix of both. One is to talk about Frank Tate all the time, and this is one of the reasons why. Is if I could, I'm very happy with who I am. I don't want to be someone else. I really actually don't. But if I had to be someone else, and I had like a list of people, like I would be Frank Tate. I
I would
love the way
also like to be Frank Tate.
and the thing is, it's not the success of his life because he's been successful at things. It's the posture with which he approaches his work. This is a guy who, and the stuff of legend. And I tell, if Frank knows I tell stories about him all the time. So it's like, all this comes by way of permission. Frank had multiple cars when he was in college, and he figured out a way to make money on the other side of having owned multiple cars in college. Like he would have the car, he would do whatever it took to get the car. And then by the time he was done owning several cars, like he came out ahead, like this cool little hustle. But like, did he become a car salesman? No, it's just the thing he could do because he was good at business. And then, or then he started a record label. And why did he start a record label? Because he was in love with music? Not really. But he like saw this really interesting opportunity to do something different. He saw like the way the record industry worked. And he was like, I feel like I could set a different tone, different model, and like serve and love people really well differently with this thing. So he picked up this thing and started a record label. And in the middle of starting a record label, he then puts this band on tour, and they need a tour bus. And he looks up and he's like, it's like $850 to $1,000 a day to rent the bus and a driver. And we're doing this tour for X amount of days. I bet and so he buys a bus. He buys the bus, does the tour, sells the bus at the end of it. And he's like, that was kind of fun. And then he does, then all of a sudden he has like a company. He buys several, and then has like several tour buses, and he's renting these things off and selling them, doing this back and forth. Is he a tour managing bus guy? No, it's just a thing he's doing because he can, because he saw a way that this culture is kind of working, but it could be better, and he could love and serve people better. And then he moves on, and he's at a Chuck E. Cheese while he's running his record label. And game 5 of I can't remember which year it was. It was the Red Sox Yankees World Series is on, and the game 5's happening, and he's getting texts from his friends, and he's like, this sucks. I'm at a Chuck E. Cheese. I should be. He's like, if we're going to be at a place for kids, there should be stuff for parents there. And then one of the buddies is like, why don't you make something? So then he starts this thing. He starts a thing called Super Franks, where it's like an entertainment thing with kids and games and really good pizza and like and actual booze and a Starbucks. But is he like a pizza entertainment center guy? No, it's just a thing he did because like there was a problem with the culture, and he's like, I think I could do this better. I love that. I love that. Like my primary model for what it looks like to be a worker in the world is someone who just finds creative, interesting things to do that just help other people in their own spaces. That's just what he does. Does he have a singular passion with regards to a kind of work? No, not really. So that's one stroke of luck and blessing, is like Frank Tate in my life. The other one is this, and it's just this internal piece. I've never cared. I'm the guy who, like, on the basketball court, like, I'll go out and play, and we're down by 26, and everyone else on my team is just pissed. And I'm like, I'm having such a good time because I like basketball. Like, I'm that guy. Like, I was the guy on rec league softball. People are like, McRoberts, dude, because I'm just having a good time talking to the other team, and it's all like competitive. I've been the same way with my work. Like, did I love playing music? Yeah. Did I care? Nah, not really. So when I had to like pass it off and it like stopped working, I didn't have that like deep crisis of like, oh my gosh, I'm not a singer-songwriter anymore. Like, I just didn't care. Like, it was fun, it was good, and it was working for a while, but then other things were working too. And that thread in there of like, what am I doing? I'm trying to provide helpful, clarifying language for the process and practice of other people's lives. Can I do it as a songwriter for a while? Absolutely. Can I do it as a coach now? Great. Can I do it as an author? Great. If all this crap stops working, I'll find another way, because I'm not committed to the form. I'm committed to the thing I'm trying to do in the relationship, which comes all the way back down to another thing I say all the time. Seth Godin's bit about art is revolutionary for me. Art is anything you create that forges a connection between people. So call me an artist. Fine. Doesn't mean I paint. Maybe if that comes next, we'll figure it out. I doubt it. But I just want to do that. I don't want to make music. I don't care. I don't want to make books. I really don't care. I don't want to just coach people. I don't care. I don't care about any of the forms at all. I want to be helpful. And if I can be helpful, I will literally do whatever I'm most talented and best at the time to get that done.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I want to finish out with the very easy conversation about belovedness.
Yeah.
Just that super easy. Is this quote that you say? Belovedness is not just the most fundamental truth of Jesus's life; it is the most fundamental truth of yours and mine as well. So, this idea of belovedness, can you kind of break this down for me?
No, I can't. I can lead people to water. I mean, we talked about this last time too. It's like
Yeah.
I can lead you to water, but I can't make you drink it. And belovedness is an identity thing. Like belovedness is not a thing. I shouldn't even say thing. Belovedness is a matter of identity. It's a matter of who I am. And I cannot, nor should anyone on earth tell you who you are. I can help you, but identity is a thing I receive internally at layers and at depths that like no one else can get to besides me and the one who made me. That's it. So belovedness is like, it's a conversation, an agreement I have between me and God. And that's the only place that actually happens. So I can set the table for what belovedness is, but it is a way for me to say that the most fundamental truth of my life is who I am in relationship to God. That's belovedness. So I say like there's nothing more vital, nor more powerful, and nothing more true. In fact, on the underside or the other side of belovedness, there is nothing. Belovedness is the intended and destined end of all things, just as it was their blessed and joyful beginning. Like that's as close as I'm going to get to like a definition for the word. Like this is what literally life is entirely about, is about belovedness. Am I held together by God? Am I valued by God? Can I pass that on to other people? Am I free in my own body? Like these are all matters of belovedness. It's an identity. And I can't tell you who you are. It's a thing you have to receive from the one who made you. That is the trick.
Do you think that the belovedness piece helps us? One of the things that I think I see so much in the church, and just from especially post COVID religious folks, is just like the amount of kind of self loathing
Yeah.
that we deal with.
Yep.
And I say we because I really mean like like any. I don't know any creative person that's not dealing with a
100%.
certain amount of self loathing.
Absolutely.
So does the belovedness help combat with that, or how do we fit it? How do we fit it in?
We don't. So, I mean, the all of that other stuff is the distraction. So this again, we go back to Pressfield's bit about resistance, like the sense of self-loathing. It's symptomatic. It's like it's not a thing you carry. It's a distraction from what's most fundamentally true. And call it resistance, call it evil, call it the forces of darkness. I don't care what you call it, but you got to know that it's real. Just don't want you living whole and living free and living completely. They just don't. So that sense of self-loathing, does that come from the depths of your soul? Not really. It comes from cultures and forces around you that need you to think you're shit so that you'll buy their shit. That's where that comes from. I mean, it comes from cultures that need you to be emotionally, financially, and spiritually dependent upon them so that they can survive. Belovedness is the subcurrent to all that when we're no longer dependent on those cultural things, then we can participate in these cultures without being attached to them. So, this is the second half of that paragraph, so belovedness is not just the most fundamental truth of Jesus's life. It's the most fundamental truth of yours and mine as well. It is also one of the most, if not the most, confoundingly and tragically elusive realities in human existence, in part because it is the thing every dark force in history most violently and vehemently seeks to distract you from and keep you from knowing. Because when you see yourself as beloved, everything changes. This reality undoes every ruthless and inhumane system ever to enslave and diminish a human life. Belovedness is the reality of all things. It is the fundamental truth of life. That's it. And the forces of darkness, whether they're rooted in human motivation or with some sort of like spiritual manifestation of evil, however you buy all that stuff, the singular focus of all these systems is to distract you from what's most fundamentally true about you. That is the rest of the paragraph, because being beloved is who you actually are.
Okay, so on our way out here, give me a prescription on a way to take a step toward being beloved or feeling it, because if you're saying it's a state of being and it's already happened,
Yep.
it's right now.
100%. Yes.
So then give me what are a couple of steps I can take to engaging it?
Have to detach myself from the systems and the ideologies and the cultures that want to distract me and need to distract me from what's fundamentally true of me.
So I just get in a room by myself?
That is the practice of rest. So it is the practice of rest is I dissociate myself functionally and practically. I say to everything else, just like we're talking about that project, you're not going to get my attention. I say it to my work life. I say it to my religious obligations. I say it to every system around me that needs me to be dependent upon it. On this day, you don't get a piece of me. And I detach myself from all of these systems. And I have to do it as a practice, and I have to do it intentionally. Rest is not just a way for me to recover so I can get back in the game. Rest is most fundamentally a way for me to detach myself from systems that would tell me lies about who I am, lies that I believe, so that I can learn to see myself, to hear myself, and receive myself as what is most fundamentally true of me, which is I'm beloved. That is, the only path. There isn't another way. There isn't another way to get to the place where I'm hearing what's true about me unless I make space to hear it. And I don't have space to hear it while I'm plugging away at my life and participating in multiple dozens of cultures that are telling me lies. You just can't do it unless you dissociate yourself. You have to create the space. It is the essential practice of rest, and it's why the Sabbath is a commandment.
Okay, so the Sabbath or rest is the road to belovedness. Okay. Well, I can wrap my head around that.
Amen.
Pretty well. Okay, well, Justin, I don't know if you're going to sign off, but thanks for having me. And
Dan, thanks for having me. Yeah, let's do it again several times. We got multiple chapters. This is great.
Great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the @C Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts. This is my co-host, Dan Portnoy. And if you like what's going on here, a couple things. One is this podcast is funded by you. So if you like this and you feel like we're adding something to the world and you want to help us do this, you jump to patreon.com/Justin McRoberts and throw some dollars at this thing. We're going to keep doing it so long as we can do it and pay for at least part of life by doing it. So your support actually keeps this thing afloat. And then secondly, if you are not yet familiar with the book, it is, I think right now, and will be for the next week or so, I think it's on sale at Amazon. I like when people buy from independent bookstores like Hearts and Minds Books with Byron Borger. But if you want to do the quick click, right now at Amazon, I think it's like a 15 or 30% off the Kindle version and something along those lines for the paperback version. And if you like audio, I read it. And so continue this conversation over there. Until next time, guys.